Hello and welcome to the NC podcast. My name's Natasha Collins and I am the host and founder of NC Real Estate, which includes its members club for landlords and property investors to come and build profitable property portfolios that completely align with their goals. Now, if you haven't got this already, and I'm going to harp on about it until all of you that are listening come and download this freebie, you want my property investment expansion success formula. Yes, you do. And the only way that you're going to be able to get that is if you go to ncrealestate.co.uk/flowchart, send me your email address and your name, and I will send that right back through to you. So again, ncrealestate.co.uk/flowchart. I'm going to send you my property investment expansion success formula. It is a flow chart. So basically what you do, print it out, hang it on your wall, go through it every single time you're lost or you don't know what to do next on your property investment journey. And that is going to give you all of the things that you need to keep growing, to keep expanding and making sure that you're building your assets in a way that's right for you. So what are you waiting for? I'm going to put the link below in the show notes. Go and download it. So how are you doing this week? It's been a couple of weeks since I've been on my own recording a podcast. I've had a couple of great guests. If you haven't listened back to the last 2 weeks, you're going to want to go and do that. I had Greg Hunt come on and talk about why commercial property, and that was so interesting. In fact, that's one of my highest rated podcasts of all time. So if you have not listened, go back. That was 2 weeks ago. And then last week, I had David Hunt come on, who is a colleague of mine at the University College of Estate Management. And he was speaking to me about valuations and also his own very unusual property investment strategy. So again, if you haven't listened to it, why not? Just once you're finished listening to this podcast, just let the podcast roll and they will come up. They'll be in order. Listen to them. Honestly, I think you'll really, really enjoy it. This week, I want to talk to you about a deal that if you've been listening to my podcast for a little bit of time, you've probably been following. And if you've got me on Instagram, you'll probably be seeing this on your stories or my stories. If you haven't got me on Instagram, it's at Natasha C. Collins. So, do you remember that I have been trying to buy an off-market property in Bath? Maybe, maybe not. Well, back in October, when I was in one of my flats in Bath, I heard a knock on the door and an owner of a neighbouring flat got in contact with me and said, "Hey Natasha, heard you're here. Do you want to buy my flat? I'm putting it on the market." And I was like, yes, actually, I do want to buy this flat because it would really help from a management point of view. It's good to keep acquiring in the same building because ultimately I have a long-term strategy for that building. And quite frankly, I like the layout. It's exactly the same layout as a flat that I've already got, and it is one floor higher. So because it was off market, I negotiated a deal. It started at £255,000 and negotiated to £270,000. Now, I actually can't find any 2-bed flats in the centre of Bath for less than £335,000 on the market. So £270,000 to me was a steal. There was one catch. I didn't have any money for this property. So I had to go out and find the deposit money. Now, let me talk to you about how this has actually gone down. Because a couple of weeks ago, so even further back, I had a couple of mortgage brokers come on to my podcast and talk about different methods of finance. If you remember, I had Alice who came on and talked about commercial finance. And then I had Josh, who's already my mortgage broker, come on and talk about residential finance. At the time, they had said to me that there were products on the market where I could get the gifted equity deposit, so I could use that, or it's day one financing. And how that works is that the lender that you use values the property at the higher value. So I was going for around a valuation of about £300,000. So what that would mean is that the bank would say, okay, well, the current owner has gifted you the deposits, that extra £30,000, the difference between what you've agreed to purchase it for and where the market is, and they'll use that as part of the deposit. That was going to be awesome for me because that would have meant that I only had to find £43,000. And you're probably thinking, Natasha, you only had to find £43,000. Well, I had a really great remortgage go through, which gave me just over £15,000. Actually, it was more like £17,000. Then I also have premium bonds, which I share with Chris, and Chris was like, okay, Natasha, if you really think this is worth investing in, you can use the premium bonds. So that's almost £43,000. I mean, I was £6,000 short, but you find £37,000, you can find the extra £6,000. It's not as a big of a worry. So I first tried to go and find that kind of finance, and it just wasn't going anywhere because banks were saying, well, Natasha, you don't know the owner well enough for them to gift you £30,000. Why the hell would they give you £30,000? So that was where we started, and we didn't get very far with that. So my second option was then to go for an 85% loan to value. And again, just as a bit of a side note, I don't ever recommend that you go that high. My plan was to pay down on that really quickly and get it to 75% loan to value within the space of 12 months. So I was just going to overpay on that mortgage because I didn't have the money right now, but I've got some deals that I will be exiting out of within the next 6 months, which could fund it down to the 75% loan to value. Again, banks were a bit like, this is super risky on this property. Even though I can prove that I can get a rental income of £1,150 per calendar month, they were saying, well, at 85% loan to value, you're going to have a really high interest rate. And quite frankly, it puts you in quite a dodgy position. And I get that. But I still wasn't done because this seemed like too good a deal for me to pass up. So then I had to go back to the drawing board, and I started thinking, okay, Natasha, how are you going to find the money? And Josh, my mortgage broker, came back to me and said, Natasha, look, I think you are going to have to find at least 80% loan to value. I was thinking, okay, well, that's only an extra 5% to find. So at this point, I was asking around with people that I know who I was saying, hey, look, I've got this really good deal. There is equity in the property. And once I remortgage out of this product, I can give you the money back. So whether that's in 2 years' time or 5 years' time, and I can pay you an interest on a monthly basis. So that was going to work out pretty well. And I managed to find another £40,000 doing that. Actually just below £40,000. And I was going to pay roughly a couple of £100 interest on that every single month. And I wasn't going to be doing that for very long. It was just going to be for the initial fixed term period until I could remortgage back out. So that was that, ticked off. 80% loan to value. Okay, let's give it a go. Again, the banks came back and vetoed it. It got a bit frustrating by this point because we kept going to banks, kept asking, please, will you lend on this? Please, will you lend on this? And still, I could not stop that niggling in the back of my mind that actually this was too good a deal to pass up. When I first bought a flat in the building, I thought to myself, and I made the commitment to myself, that if any of the other flats ever came up, I would do whatever it took to buy them at a really good price. I'm not going to pay over the market for it, but I am going to buy it at a really good price. So I still wanted to continue going forward with this, even though I kept getting battered back and back and back. And usually banks are pretty good at lending. And I was thinking, oh my days, I am having issues here finding lending. So I had the money roughly in my bank, and I was still trying to figure out where I was going to get the additional bit from. And then Josh came back to me again, my broker, was like, nah, the banks aren't going to do it at 80% loan to value. Let's go for a 75%. Is there any way that you could go and find the final 11,600 you're going to need in order to get you to that 75% loan to value and still be able to pay that £11,600 stamp duty land tax? And it's always been the stamp duty land tax that I've been a bit like, oh, that is one final hurdle that I have to find. And to find that money, I slept on it one night and I thought to myself, okay, if you really want to make this deal work, you are going to need to go and find an extra £11,600. And so I was racking my brains, thinking, I can't say no to this deal. I can't email the seller and say I can't go through with it. I can't email my solicitor and say that I'm not doing this. I can't go on my podcast and say that I couldn't find the final £11,600. I just gave up. I didn't want to do that. I was like, Natasha, you're the expert here. You can find this money. And so I went back through all of my assets and my properties and looking at, was there potential for any equity release anywhere? And one of my properties in London has a mortgage up for renewal at the end of January. And I was like, yes, okay, well, this is good. How much do I think this is worth? So I phoned the managing agents and I said, what comparables do you have on this flat? And the managing agent said to me, well, it should be worth around £340,000. And I have it currently on a 75% loan to value at £320,000. I was like, yes, I can take £15,000 extra out of this flat. And I hadn't wanted to, but I thought, do you know what? Interest rates are still low. If I can fix in long term on a good price product and still be at that 75% loan to value, do you know what? I'll be all right until the end of the fixed term, and then I'm going to pay down on this. So I got back in contact with Josh, my broker, and I said, right, I can find that £11,600 out of this property, but I'm going to need you to do a new remortgage for me. And I could just hear him, the cogs turning in his brain, thinking, wow, what kind of a scheme has she come up with now? And I said, please go and find a lender who would lend on this. And so over the course of a couple of days, he went back out, found a lender who would agree to do the valuation early and start putting in place everything that we needed to do the remortgage. Now, just remember, I did not have the money in my hands. This was going to be something that went through on the 1st of February. This is going to go through on the 1st of February 2020. So he said to me, okay, Natasha, Santander will lend to you on that property. And he'd found then an Accord mortgage for this one that I was going to buy in Bath. And so we were teeing this up and going, okay, well, fingers crossed this works. And so I had the valuation first on the one in London. I was holding my breath because I was like, well, London property prices are falling. Really? Are they going to go out there and give me the higher price valuation? I'm not sure. It works with the stress test, but can I get this? Yes, no, I don't know. I wasn't really sure, but I thought I'll just stay positive and just listen to the results. So my managing agent took the valuer from Santander around the flat in London, and they agreed on the £340,000 valuation. So I was going to then be able to take the £15,000 out extra, get this, at a cheaper interest rate than I've been on for the last 2 years. So I was on a 2.87 with Birmingham Midshires, which I fixed in a couple of years back. And Santander will now take this over at 2.49% fixed for 5 years, which means that even though I'm borrowing more, I'm taking cash out, I'm going to be paying less on a monthly basis than I have been for the last 2 years. So for me, that was a massive result. I was like, yes, okay, I found it. And Josh then said to me, well, Natasha, it's not going to be in your bank account till the 1st of February. So what are you doing in the interim? So I went to a couple of people that I know who do developments, and I said, look, can I borrow £11,600 until the 1st of February? And one of my business partners who I've worked with before said to me, do you know what, Natasha? It's 2 months. I'll put the money into your bank account. Don't worry about it. Just pay me back on the 1st of February. And I was like, wow, it's so nice. Thank you so much. He said, well, we've worked together so much. You know, I'm not going to be making a lot out of it. It's no harm for me just transferring you the money. Just transfer it straight back. It's over Christmas. They're not doing anything with the money. It's fine. So I got that ticked off. Then I had to turn my attention back to this flat in Bath, and Accord came back and said they wouldn't lend on it because it was a top floor flat and it didn't fit in within their risk profile.